Hello,
You're doing the intro this time, Alex. Don't just sit there staring at me. This is staying in the edit.
Hello, and welcome to the 15-Minute Book Club. I'm Alex Churchill, and I'm here with my honorary and argumentative co-host, Mr. Matt Bone, also host of the Aviation Show. Hello, Matt. You're very excited today. You're even wearing merch for this one. This is the biggest level of nerding yet. This is bigger than us both nerding out over the White Python book, I feel.
Yeah, I'm wearing merch that is nearly 23 years old now. I'm thinking, nearly. It'll be 22 and a half years at the moment, because we're chatting David Bowie, and we've got a fantastic guest with us today who we're going to make introduce himself. Hello, sir. Who the heck are you, and why are you here?
Hello, my name's Alexander Larman, and I am the author of a new book about David Bowie called Lazarus, The Second Coming of David Bowie. And it came out the 1st of January this year, and it's a very exciting book to have written, very exciting book to talk about.
This book is everywhere. I love the way Matt's managed to... Half our listeners have turned off now because they're outraged you can still fit a T-shirt on from 23 years ago. Like, everyone who's just pigged out over Christmas has now gone, fuck that guy, and turned it off.
The good thing is back in the day we all bought like really big shirts.
Oh, this book is everywhere. I bought 2 copies as presents for people already. I keep seeing it in newspapers. And there's a documentary coming out as well about, because we are in anniversary land this week with David Bowie, aren't we? So, without further ado, let's start the clock running, because Alex, we are going to grill the living daylights out of you about this book.
I can't wait. I'm Mr. Gavin this week, ladies and gentlemen.
That is actually going to be Mr. Gavin, because he disagrees with you about one thing.
Yes. Well, to be fair, like I said, I've only about a third halfway through the book, so we might have to have Alex back so we can argue about
like half.
Yes, the second coming. Okay, so just so you know, Alex, when we say 15 minutes, we use that objectively, because I don't think I've actually got the timer right yet in all the shows we've done. So, but about with 90 seconds to go.
Yeah, the running joke is we're too stupid to do our own format. So we're enjoying chatting too much. But anyways,
right, so here we go. Your 15 minutes, sir, begins now.
Okay, Alex, you have just come off the back of doing a trilogy that was largely about 2 awful people, namely the Duke of Windsor and his wife. When you picked up your pen to start this one, were you like, thank God I get to write about someone decent?
Well, Alex, I mean, it's very simple. It's from one thin white duke to another, isn't it? I mean, that's the reason why I wanted to write the book.
I'm sorry. Done. No more.
I have said that before, and I will say it again as well.
But I've really out at every interview.
What's been quite funny is that several of the reviews have very tactfully made no mention whatsoever of my royal trilogy. They've said, Larman, who has written a book about Lord Rochester and Lord Byron, and it's like, because, I mean, what people would think is that you do Rochester, you do Byron, you do Bowie. That's more of a logical follow-on. But actually, for me, it's all logical together. I mean, one of my friends said to me the other day, what you like is books about notoriety. And I think that's probably true. I think that I've always been drawn to writing about people in extreme circumstances and extreme situations. And Bowie, in the second half of his life and career, was in these series of, first of all, it's his career that's the extreme situation. He has gone from being the most successful British artist of his generation to being this washed up, rather pathetic figure. And then he gets his mojo back. He recovers his esteem. He recovers his standing. And then he nearly dies in 2004, the year after we saw him at Wembley, Matt. So it's a fascinating story. And what I kept thinking is, why hasn't this story been told? Because there are loads and loads of biographies out there about Bowie. I mean, I've got about 10 downstairs.
That's what I was going to say with you. Is it chicken or egg? Did you think I need to find a way to format Bowie so I can write a book about him? Or was it this was always the frame you wanted to use, not writing about the heyday and writing about the second half of his life?
It was never anybody else's decision. It was always mine, because this was very much a book I wanted to write. project, and it was always the big passion project because it's my 7th book now. And the weird thing is that when you get 7 books into a career, if you're not writing something you really want to write, something's gone a bit wrong. And what I always thought to myself was that I need to be in a position where I can do this book properly, because writing a music biography is so different to writing about the royal family, or writing about Byron, or writing about Rochester, because the main thing about Bowie is he died 10 years ago. So obviously, loads of people are around who knew him, who played with him, who directed films that he acted in, who were friends of his. And you owe all these people this debt because you want to make sure that you are doing a really decent job by him. Because if you love Bowie as much as I do, you really want to make sure that you are producing the definitive work about this period. But the other thing is that I've read a lot of books about David Bowie, and some of them are absolutely excellent, some of them are absolutely terrible. But what I kept thinking is, why did he skirt over all this stuff? It's fascinating. And after he died, I kept thinking there's going to be one definitive book about Bowie. There's going to be one book, but after that, everyone else can pack up their tents and go home. And it hasn't really happened because there's lots of really good books, lots of really in-depth, really well-researched books, but Bowie has never had the kind of Ian MacDonald Revolution in the Head definitive book about him. I've often wondered why. And I think one of the reasons is that people are intimidated by Bowie because he was so many different things and so many different people. Because obviously people talk about the chameleonic stuff. They talk about the fact that in the 70s, virtually every album, there was a new David Bowie, a new persona, a new style. And that's fine. But what I was interested in was not just the music, but also the fact that in this period, in the 90s and the noughties, Bowie is an artist, Bowie is an actor, Bowie is an internet pioneer. And I thought that all this was absolutely crucial to understanding him, because ultimately, if you're just talking about Bowie and his albums, that's fine. But you've also got to really look into the idea of why was Bowie setting up this thing called BowieNet, which is basically the first time that a musician, any kind of celebrity, had really begun to explore the internet and really use it for their own purposes. So I kept thinking to myself, this is the story I want to tell. This is the only story I think is really worth telling about Bowie, because I don't think that there's any point going back over all the 70s and 80s stuff, the heyday, unless you have something significant new to say. And the only thing I can think of anyone saying that's significantly new is Bowie was shit. And I don't think Bowie was shit. I think he's the opposite of shit. So with that established, it's interesting because speaking to you now, I have no plans to write another book about David Bowie. There are 2 angles that I have if I was going to, but I'm not quite sure about either of them, which is interesting because we're doing a sort of a second Bowie trilogy. It's superficially appealing, but I think that you want to, if you will, have your shot and take it rather than keep on flogging a dead horse, as it were.
You could do it backwards, which could be.
Well, that's actually one of the angles. I thought that there hasn't been a really good book about 60s Bowie. And that's an interesting way of exploring it, because I think that there's all these sort of near misses and half steps and so on. But is it as good a story? I don't think it is. And the thing is, but to an extent, I mean, I'll be quite candid because the books are all done now. But if you take my Windsor's trilogy, I'm really proud of the first book. I think it's great. I'm really proud of the second book. I think it's even better. The third book doesn't really work. And I think I knew it didn't really work even when I was researching and writing it, because it's set between 1945 and 1953, which is not a wildly exciting period.
No, well, really there's no abdication and drama. There's no smashing Hitler. It lacked the Hollywood bit, didn't it, really?
Yeah. And so, I mean, it hasn't sold anything like as much as the other 2 copies. And I think one of these days it will be regarded as kind of, it's like a postscript. And what you don't want to do as a writer is to produce postscripts. You want to produce books that stand up on their own merits. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule out the idea of another Bowie book, but for the time being, this is the story that I want to tell. And I hope I've told it as well as I possibly could do.
Let's sort of just get the overarching period that we're talking about. So when do you start your look at Bowie? Because we know where it ends with Black Star the next day. Where do you start, and sort of where do we find Bowie when we open your book?
Yeah, well, we open, and it was also this very cinematic image that I had in mind, that he is in Tin Machine, which is this hard rock band that he formed in the late 80s. And Tin Machine was very much an attempt on Bowie's part to, he'd just done 2 unsuccessful albums in the 80s called Tonight and Never Let Me Down, the latter of which is probably the worst album he ever recorded. And Bowie was not a happy man. He'd gone from being this world-conquering, firstly rock star, then more surprisingly pop star. And all of a sudden it wasn't working anymore. He wasn't happy. He wasn't creatively fulfilled. So he formed this band, and he thought that in this band he could do something that was more experimental, perhaps getting back to the Ziggy Stardust era, something that was a bit different. But it didn't really work because Bowie was not a natural hard rocker, and his instincts and the songwriting wasn't very good either. But what happened was that while he was touring the second album, he went back to Brixton, where he was born. And the image I always had was of him standing outside the house where he was born, while his tour bus waited for him before he played for Brixton Academy that night. He's standing outside crying, because there's a classic sense that he could never go home again. But he'd had all of this fame, all of this wealth, all of this success, and it wasn't working for him anymore, and he had to get back to something very essential and very primal. That's how I always wanted to start the book. That was always the image in my mind as to how it would begin. And that is exactly how it started. And in fact, what's funny is that the difference between this book and my other books is that my other books have largely come about in the research period. I've gone to archives, I've gone through the libraries and so forth, and the stories have presented themselves there. This book, I've always known exactly where it started, exactly where it ended, and exactly what I wanted to cover. The material that, of course, was the great surprise was when I interviewed the people who were his friends or who worked with him, because they're the ones who bring the book to life. It's their voices. I've tried to showcase as far as I can. And what's been so brilliant is that virtually everyone I want to speak to would speak to me.
Do you know what? I want to address something. So Dylan Jones has been having a whine. Tell everybody who doesn't know who Dylan Jones is, but he says, and I mean, anyone who wants to write one of these interminable books about Anne Boleyn is shit out of luck, because he says, if you didn't know Bowie, you're not qualified to write about him. You don't have the authority, and we don't need another book from you. What do you say to that?
Well, it's interesting because Dylan Jones wrote a book called David Bowie Alive, which is actually one of my main research sources for the book. And I think Dylan Jones is a terrific writer. I think he's somebody who has, he knew Bowie himself. He interviewed him many times, and he's obviously written a load of books about music. For all that, I would respectfully disagree with him, because I think that what he's essentially saying, in not so subtle a way, is that it's only people like Dylan Jones who are allowed to write books about people like David Bowie. And I don't think that's true, because I don't believe that having personally known the subject of a biography means that you are automatically entitled to write the book. I mean, for instance, I wouldn't try and write a book about you, Alex, even though it'd be a pleasure to do so, because I don't personally believe that I'd be the right person to write that book. Whereas I think that in the case of Bowie, what I'm not bringing to it is the personal first-hand experience of knowing him. But I did see him in concert several times. I've seen his films. You know, I was there for quite a long time while he was there as well. And I think that what Dylan Jones's point is, as far as I can see, is it's essentially a rather old school way of looking at rock biography, in inverted commas, should be. And I don't believe that one should approach music biography in any different way to royal biography or literary biography or anything else, because ultimately, to me, writing a biography is essentially a form of autobiography in a sense. It's you're taking your interests, your beliefs, your convictions, and taking those through the prism of somebody that you find interesting. And yes, I mean, in the case of the Duke of Windsor, I found him awful, but I also found him very, very interesting to write about, because he was so awful. And Bowie's the opposite, because Bowie isn't awful. But nonetheless, what's been very interesting as feedback from both friends of mine and complete strangers is, you've been so harsh on Bowie. And I say, really? Have I? But then what it is ultimately is that I suppose that what I never wanted to do was to write a hagiography. I wanted the book to be a serious book about a serious man. And I thought, you have to hold him up to the same standards you'd hold anybody else up to. If he didn't attain those standards, you can't just pat him on the back and say, oh, well, never mind, David, better luck next time. You've actually got to say, you failed, and you failed on your own terms. And that's something for me that's been difficult, because ultimately my daughter is named after Bowie. Her middle name is Bowie. My absolute adulation for that man knows very, very few limits. So the idea that I would ever write a negative book about him was just not going to happen. But on the other hand, I don't know. I mean, genuinely, perhaps my being so negative about the Duke of Windsor has actually poisoned me as a biographer. Perhaps there is now. Because, yeah, I mean... But
it must be hard because I suppose people can see you criticising some of the latter stuff in his career without you being able to express just how much you love some of the earlier stuff because it's not within the scope of your book.
Well, yeah, I mean, because one of the things that you're doing is you're not writing about the creation of the earlier albums, but what you are doing is you are writing about the fact that when he didn't play a lot of his hits for the 90s, he basically retired all his best-known songs for about 10 years. And there's this great gig he played at Glastonbury in 2000 where essentially he made peace with his past. He basically stood up, played the hits, and after that, everything made sense again. And I think that's a very important thing to realise with Bowie, that he was a strange mixture of somebody who wanted to give audiences a good time. He played for hours and hours. I mean, that Wembley gig that we saw, Matt, he played for 2.5 hours? Yeah. And I've been to so many gigs where there's
pushing 3, yeah.
Yeah, but I've been to so many gigs where there's a meanness, like Morrissey, for instance. He will not play for more than about an hour and a half. You just think, but why not? I mean, people have paid all this money to see you. There's just a real sense of giving people the bare minimum you can get away with and then sodding off. Whereas in the case of Bowie, there was that sense of wanting to please audiences. But that's also set in contrast with the fact that he was not in this business to pander to people. And as he once said himself, I've always failed when I've pandered to a marketplace. So when he was being himself, when he was being his most David Bowie, when he was most successful.
That's the 90-second warning. This is where I get to be Mr. Gammon. And here we go. Here is my copy of Tin Machine 1, which I absolutely adore. How dare you, sir, open your book with saying the words you did about Tin Machine 1 and Tin Machine 2, which I've got on CD downstairs somewhere. Without those, we don't get Outside, we don't get Heathen, and we don't get the last 2 albums and the collaboration with Trent Reznor. What say you, sir? What say you?
Yeah, sure. Tin Machine 1 is terrible.
Only real Bowie fans appreciate this album, which is why I've still got it after all these years.
I mean, Baby Can Dance is all right, I suppose. Amazing's all right, but it's not a good album. I mean, it's just an album that I can't listen to it. Tin Machine 2 is better. I mean, Goodbye Mr. Ed is a great song. It's actually probably one of the great underrated Bowie songs. You Belong in Rock and Roll's good. I mean, there's other good songs on it as well. I mean, it's not a brilliant album, but I'd probably slightly prefer it to Earthling, put it like that. So, you know, there's that. I think that what he did...
I think the stuff that... Sorry, go on. Oh, we're out of time. Well,
time's up.
There we go. I'm championing that because I think it's the detour he needed to make to realize.
Patreon people will let Alex finish his thought in a second on Patreon.
Yes, but which basically the Patreon thing is going to be me and Alex arguing about it in the shape for 15 minutes.
Oh, anybody who's not one of our Patreon people, thank you so much for joining us. Alex, please tell everybody once again what the book is called.
The book is called Lazarus, The Second Coming of David Bowie.
It's out now. Please do run and get a copy quick because, oh my God, is this selling? There's not going to be any left. You're going to have to wait for a reprint.
It's going to be sold out in about a week, apparently, which is quite exciting.
It's amazing. Patreon people, stay tuned because we are going to carry on and we're going to find out about some of the interviews Alex did and the behind the scenes of how this book was made, as well as letting him finish his argument against Tin Machine before Matt has a complete meltdown.
To be fair, I think there's about 1,000 words against or more against Tin Machine in the beginning of the book. But there we go. Links are in the description for our book. Yeah. So I was reading that yesterday, thinking I'm having words with this man. I really am. We've got links in the description below to our bookshop.org, where you can get Alex's book and support us, and wave 2 fingers at Rocket billionaires and their shops as well. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. And to Patreon people, stay tuned. Bye bye.